They said I was antisocial. Too quiet. Too cold. Too hard to read. They laughed when I chose to walk away from noise. When I stopped responding. When I stopped showing up. They thought I was losing. That I was broken. But what they never understood was that silence wasn't my absence. It was my strategy. Because the moment you stop reacting, they lose control. And the moment you stop chasing, they start noticing. See, people expect noise. They feed on it. They test your emotions just to watch you break. But when you give them nothing, and they're left to deal with their own reflection, that's where the shift happens. Not through confrontation, but through quiet withdrawal. That's the cold logic of intelligent minds. Not loud, not angry, just unavailable. Schopenhauer knew this 200 years ago. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. The crowd doesn't build minds. It rots them. Truth gets replaced by consensus. Individuality dissolves into conformity. That's why clarity requires space. And space only comes through silence. If you've ever felt drained around people, if you've ever left a room and suddenly felt more alive, you're not socially broken. You're mentally sharp. And your nervous system knows what your ego refuses to admit. The crowd makes you weak. It doesn't reward depth. It demands agreement. It doesn't care if you think, only if you fit. That's why intelligent people disappear. Not because they hate others, but because they can't afford the noise. Not anymore. They know that real strength comes in 3 forms: disconnection, discernment, and distance. In this episode, we're going deep into that strategy. The hidden social intelligence behind disappearing without a word, and the reason why silence isn't empty. It's full of power. You'll learn why the crowd dilutes your thinking, why solitude upgrades your perception, and how to quietly select who deserves access to you. Because some people need to hear you speak. But the right people will feel your presence even in silence. Subscribe if you're done. Explaining your distance to people who can't handle your depth. If you've been judged for being too distant, maybe it's time to stop explaining yourself and start letting your silence speak for you. But first, power through silence has rules. Break them, and you become the victim again. Inside the psychology of the crowd. They say the crowd gives you strength, that the more people around you, the more you belong. But intelligent people know a different truth. The more people, the more pressure to stop being yourself. Because when you're alone, you're honest. When you're surrounded, you're filtered. You observe yourself through the eyes of others. You adjust your tone. You hide your edges. You package your thoughts so they don't sound too much. That's the first symptom of herd mentality. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And before you know it, you've lost yourself in the name of getting along. Most people don't notice, but intelligent people feel it instantly. They feel the shift, the moment the room pulls them into silent submission. Because herd mentality isn't about unity. It's about comfort, about making sure no one thinks too differently. No one shines too brightly. No one questions too deeply. So the crowd turns thought into a threat. And the intelligent, they don't rebel with words. They retreat in silence. But there's something even more dangerous than mental conformity. Emotional Contagion. In a room full of people, feelings become contagious faster than logic. One insecure laugh spreads like wildfire. One burst of fear ripples through a crowd like electricity. And suddenly, you're no longer feeling your own emotions. You're feeling everyone else's. This is the invisible virus of crowds and intelligent minds, especially the highly aware, have sensitive, emotional receptors. They pick up signals others ignore. Tension in a sentence, guilt in a glance, fear under forced confidence. They absorb everything. And that's the curse. Because even if they stay quiet, even if they say nothing, their mind is still processing every signal in the room. That's not just exhausting. That's mental overload. Tesla understood this. He avoided social gatherings, not from rudeness, but from necessity. He knew that one shallow conversation could derail weeks of deep thinking. While others called him antisocial, he was busy inventing the modern world in silence. But emotional overload is just the beginning. Because crowds don't just exhaust you. They reprogram you through groupthink, where independent thought gets traded for the illusion of harmony. Groupthink says, don't challenge the vibe. Don't ruin the moment. Don't be too intense. But intelligent people don't do shallow well. They don't do fake agreement. They don't laugh at things. They don't find funny just to be liked. So they stand out. Not by intention, but by integrity. And what happens when you don't blend in? The crowd starts noticing your silence, your stillness, your refusal to perform. Suddenly, you're labeled too serious, too distant, too cold, and the pressure to conform builds quietly. It doesn't come through commands. It comes through micro-adjustments. Why are you so quiet? You should smile more. You don't talk much, do you? Each comment is a reminder. You are not allowed to simply be. You must adapt, shapeshift, perform. That's not socializing. That's psychological erosion. And over time, it leads to energy drain. Not just tiredness, but existential fatigue. The kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly shrinking yourself, from absorbing everyone else's noise while silencing your own signal. Most people recover after social events by resting. The intelligent recover by disconnecting completely, because their mind doesn't just participate. It observes, analyzes, absorbs until there's nothing left. And here's the harsh truth. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the faster you burn out in superficial environments. Because awareness, without boundaries, becomes poison. You see through people. You sense their motives. You hear what's not being said. And the more you notice, the less you can pretend. That's why many smart people are labeled as difficult. Not because they are, but because they refuse to be easy for the wrong crowd. They don't need attention. They need alignment. They don't crave belonging. They crave truth. And they don't fear solitude. They fear the noise of fake connection. That's why they start withdrawing. Not as a defense mechanism, but as a form of self-preservation. They're not running away. They're protecting clarity. And when you finally realize that the crowd isn't building you, but breaking you piece by piece, you stop trying to be understood. You start reclaiming your silence. You start protecting your energy like it's currency. because it is. You walk away, not in bitterness, but in strategy. You stop showing up, not to punish, but to preserve. And for the first time, you start breathing, not reacting, not performing, just breathing. And that's silence. It's not empty space waiting to be filled. It's the beginning of something rare. Power without noise. But silence alone isn't enough. You have to understand why it works and how to use it strategically. Subscribe now if your mind needs clarity more than company. Because we're not here to be louder. We are here to see through the noise. Most people fear being alone, but intelligent people crave it. Not because they hate others, but because solitude gives them something society never can: clarity. In solitude, the noise stops. No voices to impress. No opinions to defend. No distractions to decode. And suddenly, your mind becomes yours again. Thoughts untangle. Questions become sharper. Truths, uncomfortable but pure, begin to surface. The intelligent don't seek silence because it's peaceful. They seek it because it's precise. And when no one's watching, they stop filtering their thoughts and start confronting them. That's when real awareness begins. Not borrowed insight, not trendy opinions, but the raw edge of your own perception, uncompromised. And the longer you sit in that awareness, the more allergic you become to distraction. You stop craving conversations that go nowhere. You lose interest in surface-level stimulation. Because clarity makes noise intolerable. Great ideas don't grow in chaos. They need space, breathing room, stillness. When you're surrounded by noise, your mind stays reactive, always adjusting, always editing, never creating. But when you step away, fully, your internal voice gets louder. That's where strategy is born. Newton spent years in complete isolation, developing calculus and the laws of physics. Darwin's Origin of Species was written in the quiet of his countryside home, away from academic debates. The ideas that reshape civilization aren't born in conference rooms. They're born in silence, where patterns become clear, where visions form without interference. While others are busy networking, the intelligent are alone, building something that lasts. Because distraction is easy, but originality requires focus, and focus demands space. In solitude, creative insights arrive unannounced. You start connecting dots no one else sees. You start seeing systems behind behavior. You begin crafting not just ideas, but frameworks. And over time, your solitude doesn't just sharpen your creativity. It transforms you into the kind of person who no longer needs noise to feel real. In a crowd, you're never really thinking for yourself. You're thinking in relation to others. How will this sound? Who will agree? What will they think? But when you're alone, those questions die. And what rises is honesty. Not performance. Not polite agreement. Just thought. Direct. Uncomfortable. And real. That's why intelligent people don't chase opinions. They chase alignment. Not what's popular, but what's true for them. Solitude reveals who you are without anyone else's reflection, distorting it. And the more time you spend in that kind of solitude, the less willing you are to abandon your truth for acceptance. You stop negotiating with your own intuition. You stop compromising just to stay in the room. You realize being misunderstood is a price you're willing to pay for never betraying yourself again. Smart people don't announce their moves. They design them in silence. Because clarity creates direction. And direction, without noise, creates precision. Every major shift in life, every pivot, every leap, requires mental stillness. You don't architect a new life at a party. You don't build resilience mid-conversation. You don't write a legacy in chaos. That's why the intelligent withdraw before they move. They go dark before they go forward. And that darkness isn't confusion. It's strategy. Because in silence, you don't just hear your thoughts. You calculate. You prepare. You aim. You don't react emotionally. You respond intentionally. And that's the difference between movement and momentum. Solitude isn't just a productivity hack. It's a mirror. A brutal one. Because when no one's around, you see yourself fully. No performance. No distraction. Just you. Your patterns. Your contradictions. Your shadows. And while most people run from that mirror, the intelligent lean in. Not to judge, but to understand. Not to shame, but to refine. That's how self-mastery begins. Through brutal self-honesty. In Solitude, you can't hide from your patterns. Excuses become obvious. Potential becomes clear. You start building from truth, not image. In that space, you become sharper, stronger, less reactive, more precise. Not because you fixed yourself, but because you finally saw yourself without the noise. And from that clarity, you no longer tolerate what dulls your edge. You don't chase approval. You don't justify silence. You let people wonder while you evolve in peace. Because when you control your space, you control your mind. And when you control your mind, nothing external can move you. Solitude builds the foundation. But true power comes from selective engagement. Intelligent people don't reject society. They filter it with surgical precision. They don't avoid all people. They avoid the wrong people. They don't need to be alone forever. They just need to be selective. They don't talk less because they're cold. They talk less because not everyone should have access. And that's where we go next. How smart people filter their social world without saying a word. Smart people don't want more friends. They want the right people. And they don't go looking. They filter silently. Because when you've seen how much energy gets drained by empty conversations, fake interest, and shallow ties, you stop expanding. You start curating. Most people chase numbers, followers, contacts, group chats. But the intelligent chase something rarer. Resonance. They use the 3-layer filter. Layer edge energy test. After spending time with someone, do you feel drained or energized? Your nervous system never lies. Layer 2. Silence compatibility. Can they handle your quiet moments, or do they fill every gap with noise? Layer 3. Growth, alignment. Do they challenge your thinking, or do they keep you comfortable in mediocrity? Most people fail. Layer 1. Few pass. Layer 2. Almost none reach layer dry. One aligned mind is more valuable than 100 warm bodies with no substance. Small talk doesn't build anything, and being liked by many often means being truly known by no one. Smart people don't need to be surrounded. They need to be understood, even if that means keeping their circle to one or none. Because silence with the right person feels better than applause from the wrong crowd. Smart people don't evaluate others by what they say, but by what they reveal under pressure. They watch patterns, not words. They track energy, not promises. Most people focus on image, charm, performance. The intelligent look deeper. How do they respond to silence? What happens when they don't get their way? Do they respect time or drain it? This isn't judgment. It's discernment. Because the wrong energy doesn't just waste time. It rewires your mindset. One unchecked connection can undo years of mental discipline. The intelligent don't react. They calculate, then vanish. No announcements. No explanations. Just one quiet exit that echoes. Boundary don't need noise. They need consistency. And once they walk, they don't walk back. And every no to the wrong thing is a louder yes to your standards. Smart people don't post their standards. They just live them. And in doing so, they activate invisible filters. They never chase. They just lock the door and wait to see who knocks. The fake ones fade. The real ones never knock. They're already inside the silence. And those who survive your silence, they don't ask to stay. They resonate quietly and naturally. Silence becomes radar. If someone can't handle it, they're not tuned to your frequency. There is no such thing as a lot of real ones. That's an illusion. The deeper you go into truth, the smaller your circle becomes. Not because you're difficult, but because your standards are. Elite minds don't meet in noise. They meet in stillness. A look, a calm pause, a conversation that cuts 10 layers deep without noise or performance. That's how intelligent people connect. Quiet, rare, unmistakable. They don't announce their tribe. They sense it. Elite connections don't happen at networking events. They happen in quiet conversations that skip small talk, shared silence that feels comfortable, moments where both minds sync without words, spaces where depth is assumed, not earned. You know you've found your people when silence feels like communication. Respect flows both ways without negotiation. Growth happens naturally through proximity, and you leave feeling more yourself, not less. And they don't force inclusion. They build slow, steady trust through presence, not promises. Their circle is quiet, but dangereux, because it's built with people who have nothing to prove and everything to protect. And if you've been nodding through all of this, if solitude feels safer than small talk, if silence feels smarter than shouting, then maybe this isn't just information. Maybe it's confirmation. Now that you understand the psychology of the crowd, the power of solitude, and the art of silent selection, it's time to stop consuming and start moving. Because in the next part, we don't just think differently. We act differently. You don't need to disappear from the world. You just need to stop letting the world decide how you think. Because intelligent people don't wait for society to change. They change how they move inside it. Quietly, strategically, deliberately. You don't have to be louder to matter. You just have to be sharper and let your silence speak for itself. So here's your challenge. 7 days. One rule. 60 minutes of complete silence each day. No input. No screens. No conversations. Just you and your mind. Not to meditate. Not to fix. Just to observe. You'll be surprised what shows up when you stop numbing yourself with noise. The thoughts you've buried. The truths you've postponed. They rise because they've waited long enough. Most people don't fear silence. They fear what will surface in it. But if you face it, you start seeing clearly. And from that clarity, you begin to separate. You stop reacting. You stop chasing. You reclaim energy you forgot was yours. Keep it simple. 1 notebook. 1 page per day. Log what shifts. Not outside, but within. Was your thinking clearer? Were your emotions calmer? Did certain people feel heavier than they should? Clarity doesn't always arrive as insight. Sometimes it shows up as discomfort. A quiet signal that you've outgrown something or someone. Solitude is a filter. For others, and for your old self. You don't have to cut people off. You just notice who drains your energy and who restores it. From there, your choices change. Les nuances. More depth. Fewer voix. Stronger presence. Because once silence becomes your default, the world becomes readable. You no longer chase peace. You control the battlefield. This isn't escape. It's strategy. It's the quiet evolution of someone who no longer negotiates their mind. Make silence a ritual. Not once a year. Every day. 1 protected hour. No input. No chaos. Just stillness. That becomes your silence weapon. Not just protection. Direction. Because the world wants you reactive, impulsive, exposed. But silence trains you to be different. Still, unmoved, strategic. And once you taste that mental stillness, you don't go back. Because now, you see who's manipulating, who's real, what matters, what's just noise. And most importantly, you see what you've been giving energy to that never earned it. If this speaks to you, if you're done explaining, pleasing, overthinking, subscribe if you're done explaining your antisocial tendencies to people who mistake solitude for dysfunction. We're building a circle for strategic minds. Think deep. Move quiet. Choose ruthlessly. Not antisocial by accident. Antisocial by design. Not to be liked, but to be undeniable in a world too loud to listen